In this video, I'm going to be breaking down my AI expenses and why I'm spending $1,100 per month on AI subscriptions. I'm going to talk a little bit about which subscriptions I'm using, as well as which ones I think are the best and which ones I recommend, as I pretty much am using all of them. And I'm going to tell you guys what I'm getting out of each and why I'm spending this much on AI. First off, here is the look at the expense details. So you can see here that I'm spending $200 per month on Perplexity Max plan, $200 per month on the Claude 20x Max plan, $200 per month on the ChatGPT Pro plan, $250 per month on the Google AI Ultra plan, $50 per month for my BridgeMind Pro plan, and $200 per month on my Cursor Ultra plan. So that brings the total to $1,100 per month, or $13,200 per year. Before we get too far into the video, I do want to give a quick shout out to the BridgeMind Discord community. This is the fastest growing vibe coding community on the internet right now. It's a community of over 7,000 builders that are on the cutting edge of the AI revolution. If you guys want to be a part of this revolution, make sure you join the BridgeMind Discord community, the home of the vibe coding movement. There's going to be a link in the description down below, as well as in the pinned comment. Make sure you join if you haven't already. So the first thing that I want to do is actually take this list and then rank it by their usefulness. So for each subscription, I'm going to basically highlight to you guys and rank them based off of how much use I actually get out of each plan, and then go into a little bit of an explanation and share how I'm using each subscription and why. So with that being said, I'm just going to launch CleanShot X real quick, or actually I already have this pulled up. So let's just do a quick screenshot here. And I'm going to edit this. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to, is there a way for me? Yeah, I think I can do numbers here. So if I can do numbers, I think that number one is definitely going to be the Claude plan here. The Claude is absolutely amazing. This is my daily driver for coding. If you guys watch my live streams, as I've been vibe coding an app until I make $1 million for the last 147 days, you know, Claude is my main driver, and it didn't always used to be that way. I think that once it was probably Sonnet 4 when things just started to change a little bit. You know, ChatGPT was way ahead, but with the release of Claude Code and then the release of some better models like Opus 4.5, Claude has just totally taken the lead. You can check any leaderboard like Ella Marina and see that Claude models are just superior in coding, not in all areas of coding, but for general purpose, Claude models for coding are the best. And with the 20x plan, I pretty much get unlimited usage unless I'm launching like tons of agent teams and tons of sub agents. So I could probably get by with a 20x plan, a 20x max plan for Claude. But you know, that brings me to number two out of these plans. Number two is definitely going to be the BridgeMind plan. And the reason that I use BridgeMind Pro plan is because this is how I'm actually coding daily. So I use Claude, and then I use BridgeSpace to be able to launch terminal workspaces to actually use my subscription. So I'll just show you a little bit of an example. You can see I have Opus 4.6 opened up here, but I use BridgeMind to be able to access the core product there, which is BridgeSpace, to be able to launch agentic development environments. You can see here, I can just go over here, I can CD into whatever directory I want on my computer, and then I can launch, let's say I want 8 sessions, and I want to launch, let's do 4 Claudes, 2 Codexes, and 2 Geminis, and then I can just launch my workspace, and then just like that, I have my agentic workspace completely set up, and it's ready to go. There are also agent swarms inside of BridgeSpace that I use. So agent swarms are a new basically a new way to develop and to do agentic coding, where you launch swarms of AI agents, and you can use these swarms. And for example, I can just set up a team of AI agents, and I configure this team to be able to take on different roles with different models. So let's say I set up my coordinator. I want my coordinator to use Codex. I want this builder to use Gemini. I want this scout to use Codex. And then I can just go next. And then I just say I use something like Bridge Voice, which Bridge Voice is the voice to text tool in my BridgeMind plan. You guys can see here that pretty much all the sub tools that you would need with a agentic coding workflow, BridgeMind offers. Okay, so you have the voice to text here. The purpose of this swarm is to be able to check the API for security vulnerabilities and fix any security vulnerabilities that it finds. And we're going to also toggle on this swarm skill, which is a security audit skill. I'm then going to go next here, and then I'm just going to launch this swarm. And just like that, we have a complete agent swarm that's all able to communicate with one another and work with one another. And in a few moments, they'll all be able to launch here, and we'll be able to kind of watch as they build. But that's just a quick overview of BridgeMind. And really, BridgeMind, if I didn't have my BridgeMind Pro plan, I would not be able to get the use out of all of these subscriptions, because with BridgeMind, I'm able to basically get complete access to all of the tools that I need, the workspaces, the voice to text, everything that I need to be able to be a successful agentic coder is inside of BridgeMind. So that's what I'm going to label for number 2. Very, very important. I'm just going to do stop all for example's sake. But let's go back over to this here. So, I use Claude 20x plan so that I can actually have the baseline fundamental general purpose coding model. That is my main driver every single day, the Claude 20x max plan. Number 2 is BridgeMind, because BridgeMind with BridgeSpace and BridgeVoice, I can pair all of these together and actually be able to be a successful agentic coder or vibe coder. Number 3 is going to go to Cursor. Now, there's a couple things to note about Cursor, and let's just kind of pull Cursor up here. Let me pull Cursor up and show this to you guys, because I want to explain, why it is that I'm using Cursor. Let me pull this up here. So check out Cursor here, and you guys are going to see just like very briefly, what my thoughts are here. So Cursor, it's not an ADE like BridgeSpace is. Cursor is an IDE. So whenever I need basically like a better UI experience where I'm gonna, need, for example, better planning, like you can see this is an SEO implementation plan README. Also, these plans that Cursor does is really good. They have these nice to-dos, just a really good UI, and it allows me to see the code if I ever need to actually review the code, which is becoming basically like I hardly ever review the code at this point. The AI models are so good. But, I use Cursor as my IDE. You have access to all of the coding models, which makes it, a lot different than a Claude plan, because with Claude, you're only able to use Claude models. Same thing with ChatGPT Pro or with Gemini. You're limited to using their models. I think in anti-gravity, you can technically use Claude models, but for the most part, you're kind of like, you get more use out of their models, right? But, Cursor, you have multiple modes. You have agent, plan, debug, ask. You have multiple models. So in one workspace, I have access to all these different models. Like, for example, obviously Gemini models are the best at UI, at least in my opinion. So if I'm ever doing UI, I'll do that real quick. And then I can also use Composer 1.5 if I need to do something fast. It's easy and simple. So Cursor allows me to, launch as many agents I need over here on the right. It's just a nice user interface, so that if I want a really nice user interface where maybe I'm not doing as like serious agentic coding where I just want to work on like one task, I will definitely say like this experience is better. Just like in general, the UI that I get, it's just easier for me to understand in Cursor. Now, the one caveat with Cursor is that with that $200 plan, I don't get a whole lot of usage out of the $200 plan. So with the $200 Ultra plan, you get about $500 worth of API usage out of that plan. Whereas with Claude, you guys can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I know that you get like literally like $1,000 worth of API usage, right? So, in terms of like, hey, what are you going to get the most usage out of? A Claude plan is going to be way better than a Cursor plan, but with Cursor, you do get that nice user interface, and you do have access to all these different models. So, I would rate that number 3. Now, for number 4, I'm going to go ChatGPT. ChatGPT with Codex, let's just go back over to BridgeSpace real quick. I'm going to kind of give you guys a quick rundown of this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open up a new workspace. So I'm just going to select BridgeSpace here, and then here on presets, what's really nice is I have a preset with 6 times Claudes, but I'm actually going to just CD into the directory that I want. So let's CD into BridgeMind, and let's launch 2 sessions, and let's just make them all Codex sessions for example's sake, so that we can test this out. So let's launch these. So with Codex, which is the coding agent that ChatGPT offers with that $200 plan, this is what I want to touch on. So you have GPT 5.4 and the models that I use. So if we switch to models here, the main model that I'm using is GPT 5.4, and typically I'll be on extra high, but there's a couple things that I want to talk about why this is a little bit back in the list. I used to use Codex as my main driver. I used to think that GPT was the best model at coding, but lately, especially with the release of Opus 4.6 and just some of these latest Opus models, the difference between GPT models and Claude models in terms of hallucination rates, as well as just task following and being able to get stuff done, there is a very key difference when you're comparing Claude or Claude Code and Codex. So with GPT here, I have the option to do low reasoning, medium reason, high, or extra high. Typically, I'll do extra high, but note that this takes a long time to actually work. I mean, you can have one of these working for over an hour easily. High, you're going to have, less thinking. It'll do things faster, but still have, a good amount of reasoning. Medium is, on by default, and then fast is just, faster with less in-depth thinking. But, overall, what I notice with GPT models is that, number one, I get way more usage token-wise out of my ChatGPT $200 plan than I do with Claude Code. So if you actually are comparing, like, oh, I want to use, I want to use it way more. You're going to want to get a ChatGPT plan because ChatGPT, they're very generous with their rate limits. Even right now, if you're using the Codex app, they give you 2 times the rate limits until April 2nd. So they're doing a lot of promotions. But in general, I rank this number 4 because I just don't use GPT models unless, and here's the key difference that I will say, is that if I have a very deep refactor or some bug that's deep in the system, I find that this GPT 5.4 extra high will typically be able to solve issues that, for example, Claude Opus 4.6 wouldn't, because Claude Opus 4.6 to me feels like sometimes it doesn't do as deep of a dive as GPT 5.4 extra high does. So if there are deep issues or bugs that I have, I typically will use GPT 5.4 extra high. That's why I have the plan in the first place, because as we've learned, when you're comparing these plans, right, and this is one of the biggest questions I get asked, it's which ones do you think is better? Like I said, I'm ranking Claude number 1 because, hey, Claude just has, for general purpose usefulness, Claude's number 1. For most tasks, Opus 4.6 does a great job. Sonnet 4.6 does a great job, whereas with ChatGPT, it's just a little bit harder to use as my daily driver. It hallucinates more. It isn't as great with task following. It doesn't solve simple issues quickly in the correct manner versus Claude Opus 4.6. So I'm gonna put it at number 4. I definitely need it in my workflow. I probably couldn't get by without it. And I will say that they are more generous. You're going to get more use out of that plan, but I'm going to rank that number 4. Number 5, I'm going to put as, I'm actually going to do Google, guys, because honestly, Google AI Ultra Plan, number 1, it's really expensive. And, Perplexity and Google are really close, but they're for 2 different reasons. So I want to keep Google next because I use my Google AI Ultra Plan to use Gemini. So let's go back over to BridgeSpace here and let's launch, a new workspace. Let's CD over to, that BridgeMind directory, and let's just open up 6 sessions and let's configure all 6 sessions with Gemini. Okay, so we're gonna launch 6 Gemini agents. These take a little bit longer to load than normal, and there's a reason for that as well. Gemini CLI and Google products as a whole are behind when it comes to their coding capabilities and their tooling behind them, right? So Google is, if you look at their latest Gemini 3.1 Pro preview model, it is a good model. It's inherently a good model, but even now you can see that just the performance of Gemini CLI and some of the issues that you're going to experience there, you'll notice it. There's differences between Gemini where, hey, for example, Gemini doesn't even have sub-agents yet. They don't even have sub-agents. They just integrated things like skills. They just integrated all of these things. And one thing I'll even show you right now is that if I drop in a bunch of repos, right? Let's drop in these repos, and I'm just gonna say, using Bridge Voice, do an in-depth review and come back to me. I just want to show you some issues and why this is ranked a little bit back, and here it is. So it says sending this message, I think that's 2.1 million tokens, might exceed the context window. And I just run into issues like this, right? And I'm like, yes, I want to submit, right? I want to submit this, and it won't let me submit, right? So as an agentic coder, as somebody that's using these tools on a daily basis, I'm like, I can't even submit my prompt to Gemini CLI. I can't even submit it. And, let's take the same prompt and let's put it into Claude, right? Let's put it into Claude here, and Claude's going to have no problem. You know, it's already working, right? It's already going, and it'll be the same thing with Codex. Like, you know, even though it's only back one on the list, the difference between, you know, these tools is massive. But the reason that I put it number 5 is that if you are using this, you know, if you're using it and you're having it do like very small work that's UI related, you are going to have a much better job and you are going to get use out of this model. Gemini, if you guys go check out, let's just pull this up here so I can show you, you know, if you guys go check out BridgeMind.ai, my entire website for the most part was completely rebuilt by Gemini 3.1 Pro. So here's the BridgeMind website. I did vibe code every single part of this website. You guys can check this out. I built this marketing video here with Gemini 3.1 Pro using the Gemini CLI. I built everything that you can see with Gemini 3.1 Pro. Now, not the back end, but for the front end, yes, I was using Gemini 3.1 Pro. If we go over the BridgeSpace page, yes, this animation, Gemini 3.1 Pro. If you go to the pricing page, this pricing, yes, Gemini 3.1 Pro. Like, for the most part, Gemini 3.1 Pro, in my opinion, can come up with some really good, unique styling. Now, there are ways that you can get good styling out of Claude as well, like using the front-end design skill or just prompting well. But out of the box, I do notice Gemini having better UI capabilities. So you guys can see the issue with the tools here. Sometimes the model also is not very reliable, but I'm going to rank it number 5 ahead of Perplexity, just because with Perplexity, I'm gonna label this. I just started using Perplexity. This is the latest subscription that I actually made. I made it like 2 days ago, basically, when Perplexity Computer came out, because I'm very interested in using Perplexity Computer. And let me pull this up. Let me see if I can find this here so I can show you guys basically, you know, what I've been working on. But for example, okay, like I think that this is going to be a good example. Let's go here. Can I close this? I really can't close this. That's crazy. Okay. Well, let me show this to you guys. So look at this. So this that you guys are looking at, right? The AI expense breakdown, that PDF that you guys just looked at was actually created using Perplexity Computer. And with Perplexity, in Perplexity Computer, you know, I'm on the $200 plan. I get 45,000 credits. A lot of those are bonus credits. And that's one thing, is like, I got this 2 days ago, right? And I'm already, you know, what is it? I'm like, you know, 20% of the way through my plan, and I've only had it do like 4 tasks for me, right? But what I use Perplexity for, and I'll just show you a really cool example. So one thing that we're going to start working on here on stream is BridgeMind is going to be building out its own CLI coding tool. So to compete against Claude and compete against Cursor and compete against Codex, we're going to build our own CLI tool. And what you guys can see here is that I actually had Perplexity come up with, I had to do a crazy deep dive, right? Launching a ton of agents, and it was able to work through this. And then it created this PDF. Let's just download this PDF real quick and take a look at it. So this is the MVP blueprint for Bridge Code. And what I did is I had it take a look at Open Code, and I had it take a look at the Codex CLI for reference so that it could gain an understanding of how to actually, you know, create a CLI tool and what a good CLI tool looks like, right? And then I had it, you know, create this MVP based off of, you know, referencing, hey, here's how basically 2 frontier companies are doing it. I want you to, you know, do all this, you know, here's a comparative analysis. So you can see here that, hey, if you're using like Claude Code and you try to get Claude Code to do, you know, the MVP, it would not be creating something as good as this, right? You can noticeably see like, hey, there's a use case with Perplexity. First of all, you're able to access all the models. It's able to intuitively use which model is needed for what. It's able to create, you know, things like this that are just absolutely beautiful PDFs. And like, yeah, I'm getting use out of this. You know, it's expensive. You know, I've spent $200 a month. I'm already 20% through my plan. I only, you know, submitted 4 prompts. But, you know, it did an SEO audit for me. So, you know, you guys can see that, like, yeah, like here's the SEO audit. Like, I'm getting use out of this. I'm not sure like if it's worth the $200, but you know, because I'm somebody that's more inclined to spend, because BridgeMind is an AI company that's completely built in public, that's a completely agentic organization. Yeah, we're going to spend more on AI and we're going to explore some of these things. So, you know, I'm getting the use out of it. It's completely different, but I'm going to rank it number 6. It's still a great tool, even though it falls back in number 6 here. But here's going to be my final list. Just to summarize, Claude number 1, because this is the best general purpose coding tool. BridgeMind number 2, because without BridgeMind, I literally would have no tools to help me get the use out of all of these other agents. Cursor number 3 for its beautiful UI and the ability to kind of like just have a easy workflow that I can really like understand and do plans and do debugging, and it's just very nice. It is expensive though. Number 4, ChatGPT, because it's very generous with its rate limits. It's a good model. It hallucinates more, but it's still good. It's still up there with Claude, just not as good for like general purpose. Number 5, Google, for being basically great at UI, and number 5, it's like it's not super reliable, which is the biggest issue. Like the tooling behind it. The Gemini CLI is not great. If you guys use anti-gravity is good. And then number 6, Perplexity, for just the use cases that I showed you guys. But this is how I'm using AI in 2026. I'm spending, and in the grand scheme of things, the $1,100 that I spend is worth every penny. And if you guys aren't spending, like if you guys are, budgeting on AI, or if you guys are experiencing rate limits, I would really highly recommend that you start, figuring out how you can start spending more on AI, because this really is the future. I pretty much have zero limits on what I'm able to use and what I'm able to do, and I just get incredible use out of all of these tools. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I get this question asked a ton, and if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And if this was helpful for you, please make sure that you leave a like and subscribe and turn on post notifications to BridgeMind. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the future.